All right. I want to apologize to anyone if the camera keeps refocusing over and over again throughout the video. I'm not sure exactly how to fix that, and if I fix that, hopefully it'll be soon. But what I wanted to talk about today is dieting, and I think it's one of the most important things that everyone should start to know about, and someone wanting to change needs to look at their diet before anything. So first, I want to, address all the different diets that exist. I agree that while there are like genetic differences between people and like your DNA like says a lot about you, I guess. Scientifically speaking, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that the genetic similarities between people are so many that like the only difference between me and another person is like the smallest percentage point of like variations in the genetic coding, basically. I don't know if that's 100% true. I should maybe look this up before I say it, right? But that's like my way of thinking, is that between me and the next person, the only difference is like literally the smallest like percentage of variation in the genetic coding, which means that between me and the other person, the only difference in our outcome will be how we approach the work. So if we want to develop ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, we're all almost the same person. We just have different situations, different environments. The genetic coding is basically the same. And so when it comes to all the different diets there's keto, paleo, whatever there is, I'm sure there's a million of them. Basically, I would recommend not listening to anyone that tries to sell you a shortcut. And what I mean by that is that imagine we have here point A and point B. We know scientifically and by logic that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line, right? So the definition of a shortcut is someone telling you that there's a shorter way than the literal straight line between 2 points. Almost like trying to tell you that there's a wormhole that you can get from one place to another place without having to actually cross the distance. So know the difference between making something more efficient and making something like having a shortcut between two points. So what I see is that a lot of diets, a lot of supplements, products and things are shortcuts, and they're basically telling you if you take this product, it will get you there this much faster, when really the only thing that will get you there is being as efficient as possible. And once you get to that point, it's like nothing will make it go faster besides sticking to the process. And what is the process is what I need to start talking about, I guess. So when it comes to dieting, I think the only key to dieting is eating whole foods. What's already existing in nature is what your body needs. So what I mean by that is like, so there's a balance that you have to take, but really, if you think about it in a survival sort of way, your body does not care what it is that you're eating. It only cares how much you're eating in order to survive. So obviously there's different levels. We want to survive, but we also want to live comfortably. And then we also not only live comfortably, we want to kind of find then a level of optimal performance when it comes to everything in every aspect of life. We want to have the most energy, the best health, the best aesthetic for our body, for like attraction purposes, attracting a mate. There's like different levels. So in order to overcome the survival level is when you have to consider what are the different foods that I'm eating. And so I think we're all at this level where we're trying to move from survival to comfortable living. And so your body is mechanically efficient and able to process whatever you put into it. It will take the best out of it, all the best nutrients and whatever it needs. It will take it out of the food you ingest and repurpose it for your own body. So as a general rule, I think the most important thing is hitting having a calorie budget, I think, knowing how many calories you have to eat. Second is eating a balanced diet between proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. And I think the last step to then improve to go to the optimal performance level is to include all the micronutrients. I think that people are trying to sell us on the idea that you need so many supplements and all these nutrients in order to be healthy. And it's like it's healthy or not healthy. That's the key. It's like they want you to exceed this level of comfortable living to go to the optimal level. And it's like, for most people, you're just trying to get to be comfortable. Right now, most people are not comfortable in their own bodies. People have excess fat. They have problems with their blood sugar, their heart and lungs and all these things. And it's because the main issue I see, and this is just from me, like having analyzed my own diet and trying to fix things myself for the longest time, I think that people don't eat enough calories, and the calories that they eat are not balanced. So I know we have a lot of unhealthy processed foods, but I think even in those processed foods, there is nutrients available for our body to repurpose and to ingest. The problem is that we eat, we outweigh the protein with fats and carbohydrates too often. I think if we were to inverse that, it would be like the biggest game changer for most people is to increase their protein while lowering their fat and carbohydrate intake. And I think if I were to say so myself, I don't know everything, but I've seen the best results coming from eating mostly protein, a good amount of fat, and a low amount of carbohydrates. And the reason why I think that is that, again, in a survival, like a survival frame of reference, is when your body needs food, the best source of food is from animals. That is the very best, because ancestrally, like in our primal state, we would have eaten everything, like killed an animal and eaten everything, and then used the skin to make clothing, something like that. Use the bones to make weapons. You scoop the bone marrow out, you eat it, you eat the livers, you eat the everything, all the organs. They're all nutrient dense, so you eat everything. And then whatever you can't eat, you repurpose it. And so I'm sure that in an animal, there's like obviously a bunch of protein, a good amount of fat, and I don't know exactly where because I haven't researched this, but like there must be carbohydrates located in some place of the body, because not only do we eat carbohydrates, like all animals eat something that has carbohydrates, I'm pretty sure. So like the animal provides the optimal source of energy. When animal meat is scarce is when humans have evolved to incorporate agriculture into their system, their way of life. So the agriculture like obviously gives us healthy greens, but also gives us the wheat, the rice, and all these things. Yeah, sorry, I had to take my brother to work. So I think what I was getting at is that the way your system works is that when there's protein and fat available, that's your first option. And then in the case that there's a shortage of that primary fuel source is when your body turns to carbohydrates. So as far as I know, the carbohydrates are kind of like a simple structure, like molecularly, I guess. And when your body ingests the carbohydrates, it breaks it down into like simple sugars, and whatever else is included, all the nutrients are absorbed. And the sugars are processed for fat storage. And there's in a lot of wheat and other grains, I'm pretty sure there's a little bit of protein in the structure of whatever molecules there are. There's amino acids and proteins included. So basically a carbohydrate is like your reserve, for when there's no protein, no fat. So that's why sometimes though it's a quicker source of fuel. So sometimes your body needs carbohydrates, and so you just have to be, your body is really adept at, like, that's why you have eyes that can see colors and things, and you have senses so that you can detect what kinds of foods that your body needs. At some point, if you're deficient in anything, like you're deficient in protein or deficient in fat, deficient in carbs, your body's going to signal to you that it wants to eat those things. And so what you also have to be aware of is that there's emotional implications when it comes to eating unhealthy foods, and that I'll talk about a little bit later. So when it comes to dieting, I'm just gonna go over what I said. Basically, the number one thing is calories. That's to survive, you need a certain amount of calories. To live comfortably is when you need to balance the fat, protein, and carbohydrate intake, and also drinking lots of water. That's I think that's something that people already know about. People want to go crazy about the micronutrients, all the vitamins and minerals, and basically I think it's not necessary in order to maintain a comfortable level of living and to go a little bit past that. if you want to live in the most optimal way possible is when you need to focus on ingesting all the micronutrients. But basically, if you eat a wide variety of different foods, including junk foods, you should be able to get enough nutrients to maintain your health. And I say that not to tell you to eat like chips and ice cream and candy and soda. When I say junk food, I mean eat processed foods that are still balanced when it comes to the macronutrients. Macronutrients being protein, carbohydrates, and fats. For example, eating burgers, eating even pizza is good. Eating Panda Express, foods like that, where it does have proteins, carbohydrates, and fats all included. Anything that you can find an abundance of protein in is a good source of food. Because even though a processed food has less nutrients than an unprocessed food, it still has nutrients, and the most important thing is the caloric value. That's number one. So anyway, what I think happens with these diets is that people understand, as in smart people, marketing geniuses, they understand the inherent lack of knowledge in our society about healthy foods. Because I think what happened is that when it comes to wartime, I think that's when society advances and also changes, is when war is involved. When it comes to wartime, it's like all that matters is winning. It doesn't matter basically how it happens, or it just matters that we win and we win quick. So when it comes to food production, everything is altered, and depending on what's the most profitable or what's the most efficient, companies will market things in a certain way. So what I think happened is that certain foods were marketed heavily during war in the 20th century, and it became incorporated into the American diet. And then at some point, it became normal, and people have forgotten basically the fundamentals of how we should be eating. And basically, let's say from the 50s on, post Great Depression, our culture was completely changed. That's my hypothesis. And at this point, people are starting to wake up. There's like this fitness revolution that's going on right now on social media, on YouTube, Instagram. Basically, people are waking up to the fact that we don't know as much about fitness and nutrition as we think we do, and we've been lied to a lot by industry, whatever industry it is. There's a lot of money to be made in men's products and women's products. Basically, the idea is that if you make a product that's not 100% effective, but you market it as though it's going to work, people will try it, and especially if it's used over a long period of time. People are imperfect and will improperly apply the substance or use the product, and as a result, they might blame the negative, or not the negative outcome, but like the undesirable outcome. They might blame it on themselves. They're like, I didn't stick to the diet, didn't use the product right. And even if they see minimal results, but they still see more, like a small percentage increase from what they started with, they'll stick with the product long enough to give the company the money that they want. And so that's where we just have to be smart, and we have to think, what is in those products and supplements? Can it be possibly more beneficial to my system than real food? And I think the answer is usually and almost always no. Even like protein powder, any other health supplements that like magnesium pills, or I don't know what it is people take, but basically, if you think that it's worthwhile to buy and consume these products, think, could I use this and base my whole diet around this? Or like, could this properly substitute at least a meal for me? Or like, could it substitute a portion of my diet and be equal, and if not equal, maybe better? And if the answer is no, then I don't think you should be ingesting that as a primary source of like nutrition. That's just me. So the key to dieting, and this is what I guess I need to make like, it's easier for me to make some simple statement that everyone can kind of focus in on, is that you just need to eat what your body tells you to eat. And there's obviously like a caveat, or whatever that word is. I'm just using fancy words here, but when it comes to that, there's an emotional connection that I think everyone has to unhealthy foods. And it's evil, I guess, in its design, but I'm sure, and unless there's a reason to doubt it, this is my hypothesis, that companies have used like research and development to figure out how to make their product as addictive as possible with the least amount of detection, you know? So they use natural or maybe chemically enhanced ingredients that are just stimulants to your brain that forge a connection between you and the food that you're consuming. I've noticed this a lot, that as I've focused on eating healthier and foods, I've noticed that like it doesn't taste good. It has no flavor. But the more I force myself to eat healthy foods, the more that I realize like the difference between when I eat a healthy food versus a non-healthy food, like a processed food, like eating like a plate of like chicken and vegetables as compared to eating half a bag of Doritos, and the difference of how I feel. And the more I kind of delve into that, the more I realize that like it gets to a point, you eat the first thing, eat the first bite of whatever you're eating of an unhealthy food, and there's like some sort of reaction, almost like euphoric in a sense, but it's really small. At some point, you keep eating whatever you're eating, and at some point, you don't even like register the taste of whatever you're eating. You're just consuming it, and you're not even like sensing it almost, and it's a scary thing. And that's why some people kind of binge eat, I think, is that there's this unhealthy connection that they have to the junk food. And what I've noticed too is that I think it's directly linked to sugar and salt. And I think in our American diet, which is obviously a lot different than other diets or other cultures like foods, in our diet, we eat a lot of sugar and salt. Everything we eat is either flavored in a salty way or a sugary way. And that's why I think a lot of us have this like this need to go search out other cultures and eat Mexican food, Chinese food, all these foods, because we're trying to get away from like just our basic use of those substances. So it gets to the point where like, this is what I'm trying to say, is that when I started making my own food to become stronger and achieve my goals and all these things, the more that I ate just like ground turkey, chicken, and things like that, I realized that like, what would happen if I took the salt out of it and I just loaded it with other spices? And what happened is that like I almost couldn't taste anything, and I was like, wow, because like for years and years and years, for generations, people have just eaten food to survive, right? And at some point they started using spices, and I wondered, I was like, so if like, for example, Asian cuisine, they can use so many different spices and make their food taste good, but it's like, why can't I not do the same? It's like why do I have to use salt, like for example making eggs? Like, is that the only thing I can put on there? And as I stopped eating salt, it took a while. Like I just couldn't taste anything, and like my body and my mind were craving that salt, because without salt, it's almost like my receptors didn't register any flavor. Anyway, so it's like, it's a deep and complex issue, but I think basically that in our diet, we've conditioned ourselves to make connections to our food that are like neurological. And so it's like, while your body wants a certain type of food, your brain itself is fighting against the consumption of that food. Hopefully this video isn't too long. If you really want to know about diet and stuff, stick to this. I'm gonna talk for maybe 5 more minutes. I just need to tell a personal story of how I learned about some of these things. So I've always been kind of keen on like understanding that there has to be a better way to do things. And that's how I live most of my life, is just looking at everything around me and trying to find ways to improve it. And so for years, ever since I started playing sports, I've kind of been interested in kind of enhancing my performance through nutrition, just because at the time where I started playing sports is when it started getting more widespread, all the different techniques that athletes use to enhance their performance. And one of those things, they always talk about eating a healthy diet, and like everyone knows about healthy food, but no one knows exactly how to incorporate it into their diet successfully, both physically and psychologically. How do you actually get to the point where you eat healthy food and that's just your accepted way of living? So for years, I've been tackling this issue, and it got to the point where it's like I was so inconsistent and not seeing results. I had this kind of like exposure to this program called Clean Simple Eats, and they give you like a calorie calculator basically to determine, based on your metrics, your height, weight, your age, basically how many calories you should be eating to achieve your goals. And I always had heard the number 2000, and that's on all the label. That's what you read that when you're learning about the food pyramid. You learn that 2000 calories is like the average like diet intake, whatever. So my whole life I always thought if you eat anything over 2000 calories, then it's probably gonna make you fat. And when I use this calorie calculator for Clean Simple Eats, which is a great program, I don't follow the program, but I do see that. Anyway, I need to stop sidetracking. This calculator spit out the number I needed to be eating 3,400 calories because my goal was to build muscle, and I was blown away. I was like, whoa, like if you eat that much, you're gonna weigh freaking 500 pounds. But over the course of like several months, this is a long time ago, but I actually did my best, and I hit, like, because I was also using my parents' money, it was easy to eat, like, because I had so much food. I was able to hit my 3,400 calorie thing. I did that for maybe a month or two. I wasn't perfect at it, but anyway, it was hard. It was hard to eat that much, like that many calories. But so I put on, let's say, 5 or 6 pounds, but my body was not putting on, like, I didn't look fatter. I just looked a little bit bigger. And it was just the most insane thing to me. And at that moment, I realized that what I knew about calories was very little. I had no idea what they were, how many am I supposed to ingest, how it all works. So a calorie, turns out, is a unit of energy, and it's the amount of energy that is needed to raise, I think, is it 1 gram or some amount of water to raise that amount of water 1 degree Celsius. That's a calorie. So when we use calories to apply it to food, it's like, that's how much energy is required to burn the food, I think. Or like, that's how much energy you're gonna get from the food. And so, of course, by that simple way of thinking, you would think, I need more calories to have more energy. And that's bingo. That's like, I never knew that was the case. I thought just having calories meant that it was, like, it needed to be as low as possible. But the truth is that you need to have a lot of calories in order to maintain your body's functions. And if you want to take your body to the next level, you need more calories. And so on my mission, I made the goal that I was gonna do that. I was gonna eat a lot more food. And I understand that things take time. If you think your body is gonna change in a week or a month, then you're somewhat delusional. You need to realize that it could take up to maybe 5 years for your body to make a substantial and long-lasting change, I guess, maintainable change. So anyway, I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy as much food as I can, as much protein, good healthy fats. I'm gonna eat a lot. And so what I started doing is, because I've always loved eating, it's just always been a thing in my life. I've always like ingested a lot of food. Not all of it healthy, obviously. That's why I'm in this situation, but I thought it wouldn't be that much of a challenge. And so I would do this once a day, because I realized that I needed to condition myself to want to eat more food. So I would make like at least a pound of some sort of protein, 1.5 pounds of ground turkey, chicken, sometimes beef, although I would recommend not eating too much beef, but eating a whole 1.5 pounds of meat combined with like maybe a 1/2 pound of vegetables, or like a whole frozen bag of vegetables. And I would cook that and put it on my plate, and it was just this mountain. Like, literally, if the plate is this big, it's like this tall, the pile of food I had to eat. And so I would sit down and eat it for an hour. I would like put whatever spices I had. I found out I love sriracha sauce, and I put that on there, and mustard, because those are low calorie. You don't want, I guess you want to measure your calories carefully, so just dumping a bunch of sauce in there is not the best way to do that. Anyway, so what I found out is that I would be able to eat the first quarter of the plate. I would just clean it out like nothing. It was just no problem. I would get to about halfway through the plate, and that's when I started to feel like I was done, like I didn't want to eat anymore. And it was so interesting to me, because if it was a gallon of ice cream, let's say, like I'm not going to eat the whole gallon of ice cream, because at some point I'm going to stop myself, but there's no like mental like cue or light bulb, or like a red light to tell me like when I should stop eating. Like when it's a bag of chips or a bowl of ice cream or a cake, I can just eat and eat. But when it comes to a plate of healthy food, like something told me like, oh, you can stop eating now. But what I've learned over the course of time is that you should never ever pay attention to that voice that tells you to stop. Because if it's only in your head and it's not a sensation from your body, then it's something emotional. It's something like psychological. It's a weird thing. But basically, I would push past that point, and in the first 15 minutes, I would eat almost half of my food. And let's say in the first 20 minutes, I was done with half of my food. But the other half, it took me 40 minutes, and it would always take me about an hour to eat this meal. But honestly, that's a good amount of time to eat. But to take, like, that's a good amount of time because your body can ingest and process the food. So in the first, let's say the first month that I was doing this, it would get to the, like, I did it the first day, and I was like, okay, I did it, challenge completed. Second day, it was a little bit slower, but it's like, by the time I had done this for a week maybe, I would look at that plate of food and it was so crushing. It was like demoralizing. I was like, I can't do this again. And every time I would have to just force myself. It got to the point where if I had eaten like half of the plate maybe, and I look at the rest, inside, internally, I would almost want to cry. And I was so weak just looking at this pile of food. But what I realized, and this is like, I don't swear often, but I realized that there's merit to using harsh language, and it's like, it's more motivating and more eye-opening. It's like, I realized there's this little bitch inside of me that just, like, a little boy that doesn't want to eat his vegetables, basically. And he's complaining just because things are a little bit more challenging or different than the way they used to be. And really, if my goals are going to be accomplished, I need to overcome that part of me, and I need to power through that. And so over the course of a month, and then it turned into several months, I kind of just learned to eat food just because you need it. Not because you want to, not because it tastes great, it's just because you have to eat it. And every once in a while, you're still going to be eating really good tasting and taste bud pleasing food. You're going to get that plenty if you just go out to eat at a restaurant or whatever. You're always going to find that food is always going to be there. But how often are you going to make yourself eat something that's good for you? So anyway, through this experiment, I realized something. I realized that there was an emotional part of me that was connected with the past version of myself, the chubby little kid that ate whatever he wanted and didn't exercise. There's a part of me that wants to stay the same forever because change is hard. And so whenever I'm confronted with an opportunity or an obstacle to overcome, it creates like an alarm, a warning system for that little boy inside of me to be like this is not right. This is going to be tough, challenging. And what I learned is that when you overcome that, and I just ate all the food, I literally would wait, like I would finish the food, and like within 10 or 20 minutes, I would honestly feel as if I had more space in my stomach. And it was insane. It was like I wasn't even eating enough, and even the amount I was eating was not really enough for me to continue growing and whatever. But like I said, your body is so adept, that's the wrong word. Your body is so incredibly able to transform anything you're eating that if you are eating enough, like a decent amount of calories, plus you're balancing it out and you're eating the nutrients, if you keep doing that consistently over time, your body is just going to change, and your body is waiting for you to do that. It's almost like if the nutrients were rain, like your body's in a drought and it's a desert, but as soon as the rain comes, the plants are not just going to immediately like bloom. The plants will take months and maybe even years to realize that now we have a steady source of life, and so now we can adapt and change. Because if you go too early, you put all your eggs into one basket in terms of like your body's your body system, your neurological response. If you start putting on all this major muscle and your bones become denser and all these things, and all of a sudden that supply is to be cut off, your body's in a compromised position. That's why your body right now has an excess of fat, isn't developed muscularly, is because your body's waiting for that next stage of improvement to be like, okay, now we have everything we need and we can be comfortable living like this. So those are my basic thoughts about nutrition. I think everyone needs to take it their own way. Basically, take time to think about it, be considerate, listen to what your brain and your body are telling you, not what your emotions say, but like what you're feeling in terms of your body, and just experiment with yourself. You're your own science experiment, and you're trying to build a monster, but like a good one, trying to build a beast. So what I would say is that for me, being someone that can eat a lot, eating big meals is something that like is I never thought it would be a challenge, but it's so good for me. If I'm gonna eat like 10 small meals throughout the day, for some reason that's just like it's just not fun. But I like the challenge of having to power through a whole plate of food. If you're someone that is trying to gain weight, and you're kind of like skinnier, you're fast metabolism, I would actually recommend the opposite for you is like eat smaller meals throughout the day, because eating one big plate of food is not feasible for you. It is for me because I just eat. I'm an eater. But for someone that's not, you gotta just continually attack your metabolism throughout the day. For me, I have a slow metabolism, and so eating as few times as possible is actually good for me, because every time you eat, it creates an insulin spike as your body goes to process the food. And especially when it comes to heart health and stuff like that, I've heard that the fewer insulin spikes you have, the better it is. And so those are all things to consider. I would just say do the research yourself and try it. Just do your best. Throughout over time, you're gonna figure it out. But don't let anyone convince you. Going back to the first concept of like, don't let anyone convince you that there's a shortcut to this. The most efficient way to do this is just to hit your calories and to balance it out with the macros, the protein, fat, carbohydrates. And if you really want to, focus on micronutrients, but that's not that important. All food has nutrients, so just eat a bunch of different kinds of food and figure out what your body likes, and work out. If you don't work out, none of this will mean anything. But you also cannot work out without the nutrition, so you got to put them together. And so yeah, that's it for me. I love this concept of nutrition. It's taught me almost everything I know about life. It's like also applicable. Just finding out how to live, and not only to survive, but to live comfortably and then to thrive. It's like that whole process is life itself. So that's why I love nutrition and talking about diet and stuff. So that's it for me. Have a good one.